My name is Barnabas Collins. 2 centuries ago, I made Collinwood my home, my love, until a jealous witch cursed me, condemning me to the shadows. What have you done? For all time.
Hello, welcome to What the Flick? Johnny Depp is a wacky fish-out-of-water vampire. Ooh, ho-ho. In Dark Shadows. I'm Christy, that is Alonso, that is Matt.
I thought you just meant in general.
Probably. I was actually very surprised to realize this is the first time Johnny Depp has ever played a vampire. That surprised me, yes.
Really?
Really. Ever since
But he's
is
so
not
sparkly.
a vampire. I know. He sparkles in the daylight. Anyway, I'm not sure anyone was clamoring for a film version of Dark Shadows
Except
aside
for Johnny
from
Depp.
Johnny Depp. So
Right.
please describe to us why this should matter.
It should matter if you are a fan of Tim Burton and Johnny Depp working together for what, the 8th time?
This is the 8th time.
This is based on the TV show Dark Shadows, which started in, I think, 68. Started up as a 66, relatively gothic soap opera, and it got progressively more paranormal. They added a vampire, they added ghosts, they added time travel, all kinds of craziness. Some of that exists in this movie.
What the hell is this?
He's coming. He's coming.
Hear me, future dweller. What is the year?
1972.
1972. My beloved Collinwood. The Collins family.
Who the hell is this? I'm a vampire, madam. Yeah.
He's not staying with us forever, is he? I like him.
Oh, super fat.
Welcome home, Barnabas Collins.
How soon can the horses be ready?
We don't have horses. Hello, Barnabas. Remember me?
Witch, you cursed me to be this hideous creature. You may strategically place your wonderful lips upon my posterior and kiss it repeatedly.
What if I made you love me?
With what a spell.
With this?
I must admit, they have not aged a day.
If I can't have you, I'll destroy you. And your family.
Missed me.
Now, I had never seen the TV show Dark Shadows, I will admit this, but I don't think you necessarily have to understand the movie, follow along with it. I mean, the movie sucks in and of itself as a movie, without being based on anything, you know?
Terrible. Oh, come on.
I felt actively bored, which is never a good sign. Like, I was literally just kind of going,
Yeah.
be funny or have something interesting to happen, something. I just was literally like, when is this thing
see,
gonna
I
go?
I looked at my watch repeatedly. I'm with you on that, yeah.
I think this movie is, don't get me wrong, I feel like I'm going to be defending this movie when my feelings about it are like, eh. But I don't think I'm not reacting as badly as you. I will say, I think the movie's a mess, but I think it's an interesting mess. And kind of interesting to see. I don't think it's a complete disaster.
I think if Tim Burton and Johnny Depp hadn't made 7 prior films that are so similar to this, it might seem interesting. But they're just recycling the same aesthetic, the same shtick that they've done before and done
like
better.
Fish out of water, and I mean, like Dave was even pointing out that it's even sort of like there's this kind of big fish family message going on, and I don't know. For me, I have vague memories of watching reruns of that show when I was a kid, and I always remember just being very cheap and like lots of long shots of people walking down hallways and like not, like typical sort of soap opera, get on with it, So I kind of thought, all right, well, cool, this is a beloved show, even though it's not necessarily a great show, but it's all gothy and it's in the Tim Burton wheelhouse. And what if they did it like with a budget, and with actual real actors and that kind of thing. So I was sort of thinking it was a cool idea. And then you see that first trailer and it's like, oh, so this is a comedy. Okay, well, maybe Burton is going back to his Beetlejuice roots, great. And then you see the movie and it's like, not all that funny, and so many of the jokes stem from, the 70s were so wacky, which we've seen done to death. I mean, if I don't ever have to see another like macrame or 8-track or Pong joke or whatever, I mean, not the last two aren't in this movie, but it's that kind of lazy anachronism humor.
It's totally hacky. It's like, he thinks there's blood in the lava lamp.
He thinks there's a little tiny songstress in the television,
What I found disappointing in that is either embrace it and do it all the way, and make the whole movie
Go
about
Brady
that,
Bunch movie,
and which we've seen before, but could potentially be done really well with a Burton sensibility, or don't do it at all. And I actually think this movie would have been served better if they hadn't done any of that type of stuff.
Any comedy, you mean?
Any of the anachronism type comedy, and or very little of it. Well, I felt like they didn't really.
Because the characters certainly aren't rich enough to be anything but spoof characters. And then but then if the spoofing isn't funny, then that you're not left with anything.
Yeah, I don't know. See, I felt like if they had played that movie relatively straight, I thought it would have actually been much more interesting. I found that when Barnabas shows up, like, you know, and you kind of see this in the trailer, so I'm not giving too much away, like, he immediately kills a bunch of workers because he's a vampire.
He's hungry, right?
And then you see him trying to be like the good patriarch of the family and be this family man and search for some type of redemption, and yet he's still a vampire and he's still feeding. And I like the kind of conflict that as an audience, I felt like you weren't really sure how you were supposed to feel about him, like whether or not you were supposed to sympathize and see him as like the hero or be afraid of him.
I don't know that the movie knows either.
Well,
I mean,
but
like,
I liked that. I liked the gray area they put him in because that was something, you know, and I feel like they kind of were going for that on purpose, and I dug that. I liked that in this movie.
What you're saying, I think, has the potential to be interesting in a smarter movie that actually thinks through what it's about and what it's dealing with. But yeah, he does kill like 8 people immediately, and then we're still supposed to kind of like adore him, and the movie never really feels like calling him on the fact that, oh, you know, yeah, you are a blood-sucking murderer,
right.
You know?
And part of why the gray area of his vampire nature doesn't work is because this enormous cast assembled around him, they are not fleshed out. The people who are supposed to help provide context for who he is and what he does, they show up, and then the movie has no idea what to do with them, right? You have Michelle Pfeiffer, you have Chloe Grace Moretz, you have Johnny Lee Miller, you have Jackie Earle Haley as the angry old caretaker of the place.
Right.
They show up.
And Helena Bonham Carter.
Right, Helena Bonham Carter, of course, is in it as the psychiatrist who was fascinated by him. They show up, and then they leave for a while, and they show up again, and they leave for a while.
What to do with like Johnny Lee Miller. Bella Heathcote, who brings us into this movie, playing the new governess Victoria, disappears
It's forgotten for giant
long
chunks of
the
time.
movie.
Yes.
And like the whole point of the thing is like, oh, she looks exactly like Barnabas's lost love, but yeah, no movie could not be less interested in her or anything she has to do, which turns out to be okay because she's a terrible actress in this movie.
She's very pretty, has those big eyes and the cheekbones.
She looks right. She looks like she should be in an old portrait on the mantle.
She looks like a doll.
But oh my God,
She looks like one of the portraits from the Haunted Mansion.
Yes, totally. But the more she talks, the less interesting she is. I was like, I didn't mind that she was gone for most of the movie, except that it was this big like, wait, this is our character who brought us in here, and now where
conduit,
is she?
right? So we feel lost as well. And then finally, the visual imagination of Tim Burton finally arrives at the very end when Johnny Depp and Eva Green have this enormous throwdown. She's the witch who's cursed him.
She's terrible in this too.
She's really over the top. But like finally, like the house kind of comes to life, and their showdown, like what they do to each other with their powers, that's kind of fun. But it takes until like the last 15 minutes of the film for you to remember, oh, this is a fun Tim Burton movie potentially.
Yeah, I like the look of the movie is kind of cool. It's the one thing I'll give it. I like the color palette where like all the clothes have that sort of the 70s thing where it's either like super earth tone or super garishly loud, and everybody's faces looks like pallid. Yeah, whether the humans, vampires, witches, whatever you are, they all look like no one's seen the sun in a long time.
Colleen Atwood did the costume design. It's perfectly detailed, but almost fetishistically obsessive with detail.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But that's it. That's all it's got going for it is the detail, because the script is so terrible. It's written by Seth Grahame-Smith, who did Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter, and Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, from a story by him and John August. And I think John August is such a talented filmmaker, but the stuff he does with Burton tends to be really terrible.
They did Big Fish?
They did Big Fish. They did Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Like the Burton movies that I don't like lately tend to have John August's name on them somewhere.
My list this week, because I wanted to go back and try to remember when a good Tim Burton movie was, my list this week is 5 best Tim Burton movies. What would you guys choose?
Beetlejuice.
Ed Wood.
Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Sweeney Todd. No, you're telling me no.
That's your list. No, that's your list.
I would put Sweeney Todd, but yeah, you're right. For the most part, it's the early stuff. It's Pee-wee, Beetlejuice, Batman Returns, Edward Scissorhands. I mean, like the earlier stuff. Lately, I mean, oh my God, Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, and Charlie Chocolate Factory. I did Edward Scissorhands, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Beetlejuice. Corpse Bride, I think, is amazingly beautiful, even though it's basically an animated version of Edward Scissorhands. And I like Big Fish. I like that it's a departure for him, and it's very, very beautiful. It's a great cast. It's actually hopeful, strangely hopeful. Anyway, but it took a long time to go back and realize, okay, it's been years since Tim Burton's made a really great and original movie, and
unless you like Sweeney Todd.
Yeah, and that's again, it's great looking.
Yes,
it's great looking.
Dark Shadows, if that's what we're talking about now, looks great, but I was bored out of my mind. There's so much bad acting in it. Eva Green cannot pick an accent and stick with it for the entire movie.
She and Chloe Grace Moretz were the weak parts in this, but I didn't really have a problem with the rest of the cast. Like, I don't hate it.
I
as much
liked
as you
Michelle
guys do.
Pfeiffer. Like, she at least kind of does this sort of soap opera style, to use your favorite word, gravitas.
I like gravitas. It's a good word.
So that's kind of fun. But like Johnny Lee Miller, like has nothing to play, nothing to do. He's given no character at all, and he's just kind of zombies his way through the movie.
It's a bummer. We should do numbers. Matt Atchity.
I didn't hate it. 5.5.
I hated it except for the visuals, so 3.
And I'm closer to Alonso here. I'm 3.2. That gives us a 3.9 average.
It's about
somewhere
54%
Oh,
right now
really?
on the Tomatometer.
It's
Yeah,
gone
it
up
started
then.
really low, but people are kind of taking mercy on it. Like, the general consensus is that it's kind of a lazy effort. Like, it feels like it should have been a much more from those two. So that's kind of the consensus. That's what most people are saying.
There are some really good savaging reviews out there.
Yeah, there's some
Will
really bad
Leach's
ones.
review is pretty great. So go find Will Leach's review. Or read ours. We write sentences with verbs in them sometimes. All right.
TheWrap.com. Check me out.
And I'm other places too. Bye. Have a good day. Take care.